Okay. The second reading is from the Prophet by Gahail Gibran on self-knowledge. And a man said, "Speak to us of not self-knowledge." And he answered, saying, "Your hearts know in silence the secrets of the days and the nights. But your ears thirst for the sound of your heart's knowledge. You would know in words that which you have always known in thought. You would touch with your fingers the naked body of your dreams. And it is well you should. The hidden wellspring of your soul must needs rise and run murmuring to the sea. And the treasure of your infinite depths would be revealed to your eyes. But let there be no scales to weigh your unknown treasure, and seek not the depths of your knowledge with staff or sounding line. For self is a sea boundless and measureless. Say not, "I have found the truth," but rather, "I have found a truth." Say not, "I have found the path of the soul." Say rather, "I have met the soul walking upon my path." For the soul walks upon all paths. The soul walks not upon a line, neither does it grow like a reed. The soul unfolds itself like a lotus of countless petals.
Thank you. We join now in meditation, singing it first, and then for a time in the peace that silence brings. The preparation for meditation is in your order of service. Let us sing that together.
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
Okay, our friend Barry Zavah has the pulpit today. And Barry, there you got it. You unmute, can you unmute yourself, Barry? Ah, there you go. Okay.
Well, I must have been out for a half hour. That meditation just flew by. The topic title is Born of the Spirit. Some background is required to set the stage here. I was an assistant district attorney back in the days, and in the early 1980s, a pastor of a non-denominational church appeared in county court to facilitate a modification of bail. An inmate contacted him from the holding center and said he was willing to work with the pastor's church. The pastor told Judge McCarthy the church was willing to work with him. This particular inmate presented as a typical beefy, burly, grimy, bearded, long-haired biker type. His lengthy criminal history included felony convictions for federal weapons possession and narcotic trafficking in Florida. The judge was willing to modify bail if the defendant had a suitable living condition. In all my self-righteousness, I strolled over to the pastor and tugged on his suit coat sleeve. If you're so willing to trust, why don't you take him into your own house? Well, the pastor reached into his pocket, found a quarter, said, "Judge, if you could excuse me, I'm going to go out, make a phone call. I'm going to call my wife." I said, don't do it. I was just kidding. I mean, don't do it. He went out and I waited at the back of the courtroom. He entered. Well, what's what? We're going to take him in. I spoke to my wife. We're more than happy to take him. Don't do it. He'll slice you, dice you. You'll find your kids on the floor in pieces. Don't do it. The judge allowed the release and said, you're allowed to the modification of bail, but be sure you follow all the prescriptions that are required of you here on bail, and following what the pastor requires of you. I thought to myself, surely you jest. We'll be reading about this in the newspaper in another couple of days. Well, several months later, I saw the pastor in the courthouse and asked about the defendant. Oh, he's fine. He's attending church and doing everything required of him. Several years later, I attended a wedding officiated by the pastor. Curious, of course, I asked about how's the fellow doing and why you even took a chance on him. He shared, Barry, his family are pillars of the church, and he never was a problem. You know, if you've been a minister for any length of time, you receive a lot of calls from the holding center. They'll promise you anything. Oh, we'll work with your church. We'll do anything. Help me with bail. You don't go to bat for everyone, but with a little experience, you can tell who is sincere. This man had a profound transformation on the floor of his cell. Well, okay. Another element to the background story. One year, I honored a New Year's resolution to begin exercising. Rising at 5 in the morning, I rode miles and miles on a stationary bike, watching about the only thing that our antenna could pick up in the basement TV, the PTL Club, Jim and Tammy Baker's PTL Club. Between trolling his viewers for money, Reverend Baker would solicit testimony from persons in the audience who talked about being born again and finding peace and comfort, accepting Jesus Christ as their personal Lord and Savior. Again, well, sure, why not? Years before, I'd always wondered, in reading books, magazines about people's personal stories of either ESP or a religious experience, could it all be works of fiction? Could it all be a delusion? I was then and still open to the possibility, though I may not have personally experienced something or read about it or there was a documentary in the media, that there may be some legitimacy to what the people are recounting. Still in all, those things happen to others, not me. Jump forward a few years to February of 1985. My wife, Mary, began the first of several horrendous periods of difficulty through a combination of medical and psychiatric problems. My life had gone into the bucket dealing with this, of my own issues and our debts and her problems. In the second week of August 1986, Mary was hospitalized again for the third time since early spring, this time to try to stabilize interactions among her many medications. I returned home from the hospital just before midnight on Friday, going into Saturday morning, and plopped into my recliner, exhausted, angry, and frustrated, dealing with an intransigent resident concerning her care. Well-meaning friends had been telling me for some time, give it up to God. Terrific. Except, at best, on the continuum, I was an agnostic atheist. God wasn't factored into my life. Besides, why would God want to take my self-created problems onto their shoulders? It was my responsibility to dig myself out, right? consumed by 18 months of one step forward and two steps back, I remember in that recliner, just after or about midnight, seeing a little white flag of surrender inside my mind. And I said to myself, that's it. God, if you want it, it's yours. I meant every broken and defeated thought. 10 Saturday morning hours later, I was in my group counseling session. I began to speak about the tragic death I'd learned about earlier in the week due to a vehicular homicide. The deceased was little Johnny, a child sex abuse victim whose stepfather I'd prosecuted successfully years earlier. I'd hardly uttered his name when I was on the floor unloading 19 months worth of pent-up emotional pain. It was the second primal scream of my counseling years. This one resulted in a very profound spiritual experience, taking me from an agnostic to believer. And if anyone has about 45 minutes for the long version, I'll tell you, but you have to buy the coffee. In the days that followed, I asked God questions in meditation about what was going on between Mary and me. Insight was provided clairvoyantly before the screen of my third eye inner vision. I was highly intuitive and feeling great. I believe that all my inner problems were solved, though the external ones hadn't alleviated. In the middle of the eighth week, however, this window seemed to close. I felt as I did before that second Saturday morning in August. I was quite despondent. My desire to return to the mountain led to a search about what the heck had happened to me. I had no particular background in religion or spirituality to know what was going on here. And briefly, I looked for a book. I thought I was doing something improperly in meditation, and the book was Lawrence LaShawn, I believe, is How to Meditate. And I opened it at random, and it said, what occurs through meditation? And where I'd opened said, much like a therapeutic breakthrough, insight is wonderful, but you've been provided the opportunity for the hard work on the road of life ahead. And I realized I'd been given a choice. I had the first 38 years or the last 8 weeks, and I opted for the last 8 weeks. And in that I began, as luck would have it, in December of 1986, I met Gloria Shveda at a gathering to prepare for the first World Healing Day meditation. She seemed to have certain spiritual knowledge beyond my experience. In March of 1987, I began her class, The Untold Story, and stayed with her in her classes for several years thereafter. In the third week of Untold Story, she discussed initiation, something occurring in agreement with our higher self, our spiritual teachers, our guides, and God. She used the analogy of a seismograph, of a needle on the seismograph. We're going about in our daily lives, the needle kind of going along as it is, and then suddenly, pow, boom, the needle jumps off the page where we are taken to a higher plane of existence and provided with lessons often too intense for the conscious mind to remember. And then ultimately, after a period of weeks or months, brought down to a different level on that graph of life where the pen continues along. And then we will live out and act upon that which we learned, although again, not necessarily having a full insight, a prescription of what to do and how to go about it. Well, I recognized I was the fellow on that jailhouse floor or in the PTL club audience. We'd each had an initiation. If it could happen to me, it could happen to each and every one of us. Belief in God isn't required, nor is accepting Jesus as one's personal Lord and Savior. I still haven't, even though we have a good relationship. My path took me on more of a metaphysical than New Age journey. Things then haven't been the way they were during the first 38 years. However, the reality is life wasn't, and it isn't a rose garden, nor was that the point of initiation. Changed was the awareness I was now able to handle things of whatever dimension presented. And if I stuck with things that I didn't have a conscious sense of or knowledge of, their value would unfold. And such an opportunity to test that happened in July of 1989 in nearby Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Through a number of circumstances, I met Arliss. Whoop. Are we still connected?
Yes.
Okay, because I disappeared from the screen. But I met Arliss, one of the two best psychic healers in the Philippines, who was brought to Hamilton to do some healing work, some serious healing work. And he was with people, and I was then listening to him intensely. There we go. See you again, Doug. We're back. In addition to accomplishing some remarkable healing with people, one night he facilitated a baptism of fire. That is the bringing in the gifts of the Holy Spirit, likened to the day of Pentecost. This was another initiation. Again, too long to recount here, but for that second cup of coffee, what were my two experiences all about? There is some similarity to the born-again experience. Now, that term is used primarily in the evangelical, fundamentalist, and Pentecostal branches of Protestant Christianity, where it is associated with salvation, conversion, and spiritual birth. Outside of these circles, the term is often applied to other phenomena, including a transcending personal experience or the experience of being spiritually reborn as opposed to spiritual rebirth. That is, being spiritually reborn as opposed to spiritual birth. Some translators of the Gospels consider born from above to be a better translation than born again. The term born again, as we recognize from Christian fundamentalists seems to have been co-opted by them. And that's the way our ears now hear them. Our Unitarian Universalist faith frequently asked questions pamphlet by Reverend Alice Blair Wesley, and you may likely have it in the chapel building, addresses how do you understand salvation. She writes, UUs are concerned with salvation in the sense of spiritual health or wholeness as any other religious people. Among Unitarian Universalists, instead of salvation, you will hear of personal growth, increased wisdom, strength of character, and gifts of insight, understanding, inner and outer peace, and compassion. The ways in which these things come to change and heal us, Reverend Bailey Wesley concluded, are many indeed. Sounds like a UU baptism of fire to me. It is also different in New Thought churches, which suggest new thought would arise in the middle and latter portion of the 19th century there is a similar root to the transcendentalist experience of Unitarian and Universalists, and then went on to Christian Science and others such as Unity and Church of Life Science, I believe, and others. There is also different in New Thought churches, which suggests that being born again is a continuous process that must be done repeatedly as one dies to the old, the ineffective ideas, and redirects oneself towards Christ consciousness. Among ancient esoteric teachings is the Rosicrucian order. It is taught all that is an expression of cosmic energy as it manifests on different planes of being. Each person's mission on earth is not merely to learn the divine language, but also to speak it and become as God in actuality, a logos in our own right, as he already is potentially. We already have that in us. It's much like education reaches in and extracts, pulls out to that which is already there. This being so, advancing self-consciousness describes the way of attainment. Incarnate existence subserves this goal by giving birth to heaven on earth, by raising consciousness through death, while man and woman is yet in their body, to an awareness of spirit being. That is the nature of the ultimate journey of this physical plane, to give birth to heaven on earth. One way is, as Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within, available in the here and now, attained by turning to love. The kingdom of heaven is within, and it's immediately available by turning to love. And as has become known in our Western experience, with the early church having waited for Jesus to return, the second coming was seen by some as imminent. Oh, he'll be here next week. Oh, he'll be here next month. He'll be here next year. 60 and 70 years passed. All right, I'm patient, but enough's enough. When is he coming? The early church fathers kicked that can down the road to an end time when, well, we don't know. I mean, we just don't know. But if you follow this prescription and do these things and be a good soul, be a good person, you'll be ready. We don't know, but be ready. Could happen anytime. And this contrasts with the fundamentalist belief that heaven is to be reached only via an apocalyptic end-time scenario for those who are born again. So we see how that developed. They kicked the can down the road. Another esoteric precept, similar to the Rosicrucians, is found in the Course in Miracles, which teaches that the physical world is but an illusion. Humanity, having accepted the false belief of our separation from God due to being forcibly removed from the garden, thanks to the machinations of Adam and Eve, and I covered that some months ago. And as a result, we've been separated from the divine, and history as we know it has begun. I tend to accept the more esoteric New Thought view, but there's merit to the greater whole, to the oneness of it. Elizabeth Heich's book, Initiation, describes the ancient Egyptian mystery school initiation. Excuse me. An initiate is locked into a sarcophagus confronting their fear of death. For those who fail, they continue to draw those lessons to them lifetime after lifetime until they get it and pass the initiation, having overcome the fear of death. Alice Bailey, a metaphysical writer, and I believe she started the Theosophical Society, in her book From Calvary to Bethlehem, describes the path of initiation which all souls take, all of us take, from mineral, through animal, through human consciousness, including that attained by Jesus. Jesus's initiation was overcoming the fear of death. Not a bad way to do it. Once awareness goes from the head as a possibility, being open to the possibility, rooting solidly in the gut as an undeniable reality by a direct experiential event, we have attained the level of Christ consciousness, provided Jesus of Nazareth with his title as the Christ. That's all Christ consciousness is. It's the awareness, moving from the head as a possibility to the gut as I got it, I know it, that we're all connected. Now, I don't like paper cuts or cuts when I'm chopping vegetables, so I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have enjoyed having nails pounded into me, testing my strength of my belief that we're all connected. And I'm really hoping, because I don't know, maybe driving a 35.5-foot motorhome and towing a car which cannot be backed up across the country is my version of stretching my comfort zone of going down those 18% grades in British Columbia, Alberta, when the highway of death in Bolivia is only 14%, and testing my belief of the possibility in the gut. Do I believe? That is my initiation of overcoming the fear of death. If so, I hope I've passed it, because those 18% grades are pretty interesting as the brakes begin to smoke. Please hear this. I do not advocate undertaking risky physical challenges, such as becoming a human fly and climbing up a Manhattan skyscraper by your fingers, or walking a tightrope across Niagara Falls, just to advance one's spiritual growth and consciousness, to have that direct experiential, I got it. There are physical laws of the universe as there are spiritual. Gravity is one of those physical laws. Having faith is one thing. Climbing a tall building connected only by our fingers, or stepping onto a thin wire above the churning Niagara Falls, is quite another. We use covenant to affirm and promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. A free and responsible search, not a reckless one. We're not required to confront the fear of death with every initiation, nor is pushing the envelope the only way to attain the level of Christ consciousness. Yet, admittedly, Jesus had a powerful aha experience for sure. But it didn't just fall upon him like opening a cupboard door and having a can of peaches fall on your head. He studied for years, if not lifetimes. There's responsible historical evidence that in the years he disappeared from the pages of the New Testament, he went east and studied with the adepts, the Hindus and Buddhists, and in northern Tibet, where he learned the techniques of controlling breath and mind-body control. And he learned some of the ancient secrets and mysteries. And he returned, and what we have is evidence of it in the Gospels. He studied for years to begin to take his final initiation. Now, do we really get it? I mean, deep in the gut, do we get that we're all part, that each and all are part of the interdependent web of existence? Or more so, do we really believe, do we really get, do we really understand that there is one? How do we know? Are we as certain as we know the sun is coming up in the morning? Do we know a starving child dying somewhere in a refugee camp in Darfur affects us? Maybe not as much as the nexus to political or corporate corruption and its financial costs for delivering material goods and services to sustain our life. But in both ways and more, we are equally connected. The living tradition which we share speaks to direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. Trust our direct experiences. That's one of the key messages here. Trust our direct experiences. That is one of the aspects, one of the many aspects of Unitarian Universalism that I appreciate. We're all boots on the ground, living in the here and now form of religious expression. In a thesaurus, words related to initiation include a start, beginning, commencement, or opening. We have initiations all the time. Simply living life and pointing our feet in any direction will provide numerous opportunities to be at the right place at the right time, leading to a sense of spiritual health and wholeness and personal growth, is stated in Reverend Wesley's UU pamphlet. As individuals, do we always act upon the numerous opportunities for growth? Do we see them or recognize them as such? The universe is a prosperity-giving enterprise presenting all of us with innumerable opportunities for growth. It occurred to me, for example, a few years before retiring, that, oh my goodness, I have been presented with a position, an occupation, a career that's provided me with a good salary, yes, to get through those difficult times I spoke of earlier, that had vacation days. I was up to 6 weeks a year of vacation before retiring, of personal days, of sick days, of a medical plan, of a retirement package, all to begin to learn the lessons that clearly were mine in this lifetime of judgment, of the consequence of judgment. So meeting that pastor and tugging on his suit coat sleeve and saying, don't, he'll slice you and dice you and leave your children in pieces on their beds on the floor of your home, was all part of me learning about judgment, wasn't it? Indeed, the universe is a remarkable, gigantic, prosperity-giving machine, giving us perhaps more so, definitely giving us more so what we need to learn to grow in consciousness along our soul's journey than what we may need. Oh, I need that car, I need that house, I need that material, big kaboom. It provides us what we need. Unitarian Universalism constantly challenges us to put our core values into action. That's where free will and choice come into play, of course. The paths are many. Blessed that on our journey, we are not alone. We're here to support each other. And that's the fellowship, and that's the magic of what you offer week after week, be it in a physical plant or here on the magic of the internet, connecting us all. We choose to bring ourselves here at this moment in time into the world, into the community of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Hidalgo County, and to this covenant faith where we agree by free will, seeking to create a heaven on earth. This is our path. This is our initiation. Peace, joy, and blessings be with you.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you very much.